What's up, everyone? Michael here with the news of the week. This is a new thing that I'm going to try doing, so apologies that this first attempt at this is not good or something like that, or it seems like less unscripted or whatever, because this is just kind of a thing I kind of wanted to try doing because recently I haven't had time to do individual topic videos, and I feel like I've always kind of wanted to talk small amounts about certain topics, but not like a whole bunch for a video, and so I've just kind of skipped over things. Enough of that. We have a game in Discord called the Broken Chat Box, link in the description. We have a news and such section, so I'm going to be taking news from there and just talking about everything that's going on. If I find it relevant, I might skip one or two here or there if it's like irrelevant and stuff like that. There's some small topics that I just won't bother covering. It's like, oh, this developer announced that they're working on a game or whatever. Unless it's relevant to me and I have something to say about it, I won't bother. But basically what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be going over these articles that have been going on for the last week or so and talking about. First, I'm going to talk about the ones that are relevant, then I'm going to talk about the ones I have a lot to say, and then we'll kind of taper off from there. And then at the end, since this is supposed to be a weekly thing, I'm going to try talking about news of the channel and what I'm working on and stuff like that, because why not? If you're watching to the end of the video, you may as well be interested, right? So anyways, let's go ahead and begin. Again, apologies, this is a little bit, feels unscripted, because it's not scripted, it's just me kind of going through the news, and I don't know what my background footage is going to be. I'm probably going to throw up Sonic, because I feel like playing Sonic right now. So after I record this, I'm probably going to play some Sonic and just throw that in the background. So it'll either be Sonic Forces, Sonic Lost World, or Sonic Generations. One of those. It'll be in the description. Okay, so first off, first relevant thing, Age of Wonders 3 is free on the Humble Bundle store right now. So if you want to go pick it up, it is free until Saturday, aka the day after this video releases. It will give you a Steam key, and you have to redeem that Steam key before Saturday, or else it'll expire or something like that. I don't remember the exact expiration date. I've already redeemed it. But if you want Age of Wonders 3, which I have personally never played and didn't actually own, go ahead and pick it up on the Humble Bundle store. I only mention that now because basically it is limited, so it'll actually, you know, disappear in a day or so. So make sure to pick that up if you're interested. Another topic that I want to talk about, Square Enix unveils the first Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer in several years, 3 years according to the Eurogamer article, but I'm actually super excited for the Final Fantasy VII Remake. You can check out the link to the trailer and this article in the description, but basically I'm super excited for Final Fantasy VII Remake, not because I want a remaster of Final Fantasy VII. I don't want them to stay faithful to Final Fantasy VII. I'm actually more excited for what they don't stay faithful for, because Final Fantasy VII, for as much as people praise it, it's not my favorite Final Fantasy VII, or Final Fantasy VII isn't my favorite Final Fantasy. That was a screwed up way to say things. It's not my favorite Final Fantasy, and there are a ton of issues with it. But for the things that they've actually said that they're changing in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, the most one I'm excited for is the idea of changing up the story and kind of making it more fall in line with Crisis Core, which Crisis Core was awesome and interesting and really fun, and it still stayed in line with like Final Fantasy VII, but it did sort of retcon certain things and change things up a little bit, and I think those changes were actually really good, and they made the game better, and they made Final Fantasy VII look outdated and weird, and Final Fantasy VII has a lot of writing plot holes and things, so if they could go back and like change all those and fix them up, super awesome. So I'm super excited for that. The remake trailer obviously looks a little unfinished in certain places. They're using Unreal Engine 4 for this, I believe, which actually makes it look gorgeous, and it's done really well, and it looks really fun and exciting. It does seem like they might have changed up the combat system, which I'm perfectly fine with. I'm really excited to actually like feel the game and play it. Obviously, I don't get hyped up for games very often because we've had so many disappointments, but I'm really excited for this. Now, there are some things that have been kind of questionable about the Final Fantasy VII Remake. They have said that like, oh, we're gonna have 3 episodes that have 3 different gameplay styles and certain things like that, and they've kind of been retconning and changing up how they've done that, and they announced that they were redoing it from scratch at one point, and so there's been a lot of question marks surrounding this remake, but they definitely don't want to screw it up. And it seems like it's going to be good. From this footage that we see here, it seems very faithful to the designs, the original designs, but more modernizing it. And it seems like the gameplay looks really fun and snazzy and stuff like that Final Fantasy VII has been known for. But the major selling point of Final Fantasy, at least the modern Final Fantasies from 7 on, have always been the sort of cinematic story. And so we won't know whether the remake will be good until we can experience that. I hope they don't fuck it up, but they might. I don't know. I really hope it's good. That's all I gotta say on that. It looks cool. It looks fun. I love seeing Cloud's new look, and Aerith looks gorgeous. So there we go. And she's not dead. Yay! All right, anyways, on a more serious note, Senator Hughely announces a bill banning loot boxes and pay-to-win mechanics. It is a proposition for a bill to ban loot boxes and pay-to-win mechanics inside games that are targeting children. He mentioned specifically games like Candy Crush and several other games that actually sort of have an aesthetic that they know children are playing, and they're saying that companies should not be manipulating children to take advantage of them for financial gain. And awesome. I think that's great. Now, personally, I like this take better than all the other takes that have been taken on loot boxes. Now, obviously, I think loot boxes are gambling. They are just straight up gambling. I don't care what the law says. I don't care what people think. It is gambling. You are literally spending money for an unguaranteed result. Now, some people call it an investment, a false purchase, or like, oh, you're buying the box. You're not buying what's in the box. But obviously, you buy the box to get what's in the box. It's the same thing as a gacha. You buy the ticket to get what's in the gacha. That's how it works. So you're buying a random item. You're not buying the ticket. You don't go home, frame the ticket. You don't buy a loot box on like Overwatch and then take a screenshot of it and be like, guys, I love this loot box. I'm never opening. No, you buy the loot box and you open the loot box because you want what's inside of it. That's gambling. Sorry to break the news to you. He also mentions, however, pay-to-win mechanics, and I like this take better than all the other ones, like Belgium, Washington State, Hawaii, several other places as well. I'm not 100% up to date because I don't follow the drama all that much, but basically, a lot of places are saying, hey, this stuff is gambling, but this take is about exploiting children, and it's actually great to see this take taken, because while it is, hey, think of the children, that's actually the entire point of it. So basically what he's arguing here is that games should not be designed for kids to take advantage of them for monetary benefit, essentially. So basically what they're doing is being like, hey, we're going to monetize the addiction of these children on our games. And he feels that that's not okay. There's been tons and tons of horror stories of children spending tons and tons of money on these types of microtransaction games. And I highly encourage you to read through this because he focuses on a key point to this. Because while adults are consenting and they know they're gambling, because it is gambling, and we're kind of going in the community and there's other politics already going around this saying like, hey, we should make this gambling. This focuses on basically having the same effect for both loot boxes and other types of manipulative practices. It's not just loot boxes, because loot boxes, if you just ban loot boxes, companies are going to be like, okay, well, it's not a loot box, it's a gacha now, like Japan did, basically. And so basically, if they just ban loot boxes, that's not going to work and it's not going to stop it. But this is actually talking about banning exploitative practices and just not taking advantage of children, which I think is a good take on it. Because while adults are consenting and they can be like, yeah, I'll pay into gambling or whatever, that's their fault. And we can easily kind of, shove it off as like, oh, well, they're the one buying it. And while that's not a great way to look at it, because gambling addiction is a huge thing and we should definitely take it seriously, this is a huge step in the right direction, and it would push companies to kind of stray away from it regardless, because children, for as much as consenting adults are the ones that are buying the product, the outlook of this would actually make it look kind of evil and ingenious or whatever and stuff like that. So it could actually have a huge impact on everything. And it would also get rid of all these exploitative practices that children are being taken advantage of, which is just a good thing in general. So obviously, I'm not going over the entire thing here. I will have a video coming up about loot boxes and hopefully the demise of it in the future at some point whenever I get around to it. But do check out the article in the description. This is linking to Ars Technica, which has a link to the entire thing, and they talk about it and stuff like that. So yeah, they're basically calling it, as outlined, the bill, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It's going to be mirroring a lot of stuff inside of that. What did they call this one? Today announced plans to introduce the Protecting Children from Abusive Games Act. Not the most, appealing name, but it's to the point, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're protecting children from abusive games. So basically, they're looking to ban games that would make it so that you can't exploit children. Now, I do want to say one point here. As an artist, regulation and banning isn't great, because it kind of censors, artists and things like that, and can be used to manipulate artists into just not being able to produce what they want to produce. And that's bad in general. But I think that focusing it on children makes it so that you can change up your audience in a sense. So basically, what I think will end up happening here is that they'll make it so that anything that has gambling, aka loot boxes or pay-to-win mechanics, would have to be rated above a certain point. And I think that's a good take. Because it won't censor everything, but it will make it so that, hey, these games have to basically front load it and be like, hey, by the way, this isn't for minors. And I think that's a good take on it. Again, it won't fix everything, but it's a step forward. And this is in the US, by the way. I forgot to mention that. This is all in the US. Sorry, I'm in the US, so I talk about it like everyone is. But there you go. I'm an American, so I'm an idiot. Anyways, let's go to the next article posted by Evan the Tank. Basically, they're talking about Subverse being the most successful Kickstarter. So basically, it is a porn game. So if you don't know about that, it is an adult entertainment game headed by FOV Studio or FOW Studios. Yeah, FOW Studios, sorry. FOW or Studio FOW? Is it Studio FOW or FOW Studio? I think it's Studio FOW. Sorry, I completely forgot their name for a moment. But basically, they're known for their very questionable 3D animations and a sexual nature and stuff like that, and their erotic animation works, which is non-consensual stuff and things like that, but it's fantasy, so it's okay. Whatever, it's kind of gross in certain senses. But hey, they've actually built a large interactive studio for this stuff, and they were like, hey, we want to make a video game, because not safe for work video games have been kind of a growing industry recently, and over the last few years, I've always been kind of involved. I've worked on adult games in the past, and currently am as at the moment as well. Can't talk too much about it, but there you go. And so basically, this is actually kind of a cool thing, and I want to mention that it's actually been a successful Kickstarter campaign, because this is a growing industry, and I think it's really, really cool to see something grow up this big. Now, what do I actually think of Subverse, and will I be checking it out? For one, yes, I will be checking it out. I will have a review of it when it comes out, but I'm questionable on this one, because adult games have had a reputation for just being bad. Now, this game has like top-down shooter segments, it has some tactical segments, and obviously it has adultification, to where basically you have adult animations and relationships and VN elements into this. Now, it looks like a huge game, but they've actually had a bunch of funding for it. I'm trying to look for the Kickstarter page. There we go, found it. But their Kickstarter has been fully funded, and is it closed? It might be closed. Oh no, I think it can still pledge. I don't know Kickstarter at all, so I don't know. You might be able to still pledge to it. I think it was done, though. I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, it's fully funded. It has a Steam store page as well, which I will also link in the description. However, you have to be signed in to view it, because basically it is adult, and you can't actually view adult games on Steam unless you are, there. But this does mean that it does have some things that are kind of different from FOW's normal works, as in this is all consensual stuff. They did announce that. They did announce that they're not sure what platforms it will be available on. They know it will be on Steam, because it's already on Steam, but they don't know if it'll be on other storefronts, so you might have to be forced to go to Steam. I know that they're talking with other storefronts such as GOG, and they just weren't responding and stuff, and it's been taking a while. And this is another big hurdle with adult games. And the reason why this is such a big deal that it's actually been this successful is because this could be a huge push towards that industry to become a little bit more mainstream. Obviously not mainly mainstream. It's never going to be like, the big Call of Duty is Subverse. No, that's not going to happen. But it's obviously a huge industry, and people want these types of games, which I think is really cool, because I've been part of that industry for quite a while now, and I've been following it for a very long time. Sorry if that's a surprise to anybody, but you obviously haven't checked out my website at michaelpstanich.com. I have links to it. Duh. But yeah, it looks interesting. I'm not holding highest of hopes, but I am morbidly curious, so I will be checking it out whenever it comes around. So there you go. If you're looking for footage of that, it will be out eventually by moi. So we'll see how that goes. But I have low expectations for how good the game is actually going to be. I think it's going to be focused around just being this kind of comedic sort of sexual experience thing, which is normally what FOW does anyways. So there you go. E-Ray reflects on how Anthem did not meet expectations and says that the old way of releasing games doesn't work. This one pisses me off a little bit, because there's so many places I could start with this one, but let's start off with the obvious one. EA hasn't been releasing games like we used to traditionally release games, which makes this statement seem freaking ridiculous. Now, they obviously talk about how Anthem didn't work as a games as a service. They were talking about the live service thing just not working, and they should have released it differently, or they should have done certain things differently when it came down to the release schedule, saying that the old way of releasing games, where we just release a product, doesn't work anymore. The problem with this statement is the fact that they have not been releasing games in a traditional way. The traditional way of releasing a game is you complete the product and then you release the product, and mostly quotation marks being complete, because it is a complete product. You might patch it up a little bit, but essentially the game is there. What EA has been doing with these live services is they've been releasing incomplete games, which is early access, which is not a traditional release, and then releasing them, and then saying they're adding in new content. They've also been splitting up these releases into several different editions, as in they have like, how many editions of Anthem did they had? They have like 14 or something like that across all the different platforms, because they all had different release dates. They've made it confusing and stupidly ridiculous to end up buying a freaking game. So it is not releasing in the traditional way at all. They've already been releasing incomplete games, and then they end up releasing a roadmap. Again, untraditional. Normally games release in a complete state. You don't release a roadmap to like, this is how the game's gonna get complete, guys. And you also don't do day one DLC. That is in no way traditional. So for me, this kind of upsets me just because, one, it shows how blind these CEOs are to the actual game industry and the way that it freaking works. And they've been part of it for so long that it's just like, how do you forget about this stuff? But obviously they don't care. They don't care about any of this. They don't care about any of us gamers. They just want to make money. And that's all they're looking at here. And that's mostly what they're saying here. They're saying that the sales didn't meet their expectations. It didn't get as many downloads as they wanted. But even though the sales were actually quite astronomical, I think Anthem sold millions and millions of copies across all the platforms. And it was actually hugely successful on a financial basis. But when you actually look at it, that, you know, people aren't buying the microtransactions. People aren't staying with the game. They're not buying into this live service bullshit. So basically, they're like, hey, we need to change the way we're communicating with our players and like change the way they're releasing games. So essentially what they're saying is they want to, at least this is my speculation, they want to release games in early access that are still in development and just be a little bit more upfront about it instead of lying to their customers and being like, oh, this game is complete, guys, just buy the finished version, and then releasing a roadmap or whatever, which is already non-traditional. They just want to release games in early access and then try to scam their players out of more money because that's what they do now. That's literally all they do now, which is just upsetting. And it ruins so many games. And it's just this sort of statement. I'll have a link in the description to the Eurogamer article I'm looking at now about it. Yeah, basically, long story short, they're like, Anthem didn't work because basically the old way of making games doesn't work. But the thing is, they're not making games the way they used to make games. Now, there is some argument to be had here about the whole BioWare overworking thing and how BioWare was doing the thing that they used to do. I also want to point out that EA's historical release figures did not follow this sample. BioWare hasn't always been a part of EA. And when they ended up buying BioWare, this is when they ended up running into problems. And I think the problem isn't necessarily in BioWare. I think it was EA combined with BioWare's changes, as in the BioWare isn't the same BioWare it was. So, yeah, basically EA is just saying the old way doesn't work, but they haven't been following the old way anyways, and that's just sort of upsetting. Riot employees, over 150 employees, protest and forced against the forced arbitration clause inside their contract and everything. I should phrase this differently. 150 or over 150 employees from Riot decided to walk out after forced arbitration was in their contracts, kind of silencing people from the sexism and minority discrimination that has been inside Riot's offices. Now, inside main, this is talking mostly about Riot's main offices. And so they have, I think it was 2,500 or something like that. Like, they have a ridiculous amount of employees worldwide, but this is talking about the main offices, which I think the last time I checked was like 800 employees. Apparently they've been having a hugely toxic workplace, which has been known for years, quite frankly. We've known about the CEO being a jerk for years. This has been a problem going on. Again, it's a problem that's been going on for years. So the fact is, now people are actually standing up to it, and this is actually in light of some lawsuits. So Riot actually ended up announcing that they were going to have some plan, and they hired a diversity officer at like some triple K freaking salary bonus thing, which was ridiculous to begin with. I won't even touch on that. But basically, they had all these plans, and they said that things were going to change, and they didn't change. And this led to lawsuits. So 2 lawsuits ended up being brought forward by 2 female employees who had been discriminated against. And basically, Riot was like, hey, we have forced arbitration inside your contract, and so you can't do this. You have to go through us to actually file a lawsuit. And so if you don't know what forced arbitration is, go ahead and look it up. But essentially, it is used by companies to silence frivolous lawsuits. So basically, if somebody's like, hey, I don't like the hours I'm getting, and then they decide to throw up a lawsuit, forced arbitration makes it so it protects the company and basically other, workers and stuff like that from getting sued out of nowhere. Now, in theory, it's actually not a bad thing to have arbitration. However, the fact of the problem is that Riot's contracts actually had it as mandatory, as in you had to have forced arbitration. Now, they have redacted that for new employees, but they still haven't redacted it for older employees, which means that older employees are still forced onto this arbitration. And it's caused a lot of issues and a lot of tension because Riot's offices have been really, really toxic for a really long time. And it's apparently been getting worse, and people are now speaking up about it, and it's been getting a lot of press. And it's actually starting to hurt Riot, as in, again, 150 plus employees walked out and protested this, which meant that they were still on pay, but they just weren't working. They were just sitting outside, with signs and everything. The average protest. The article from Eurogamer I'm linking in the description will end up having pictures of it and stuff, and et cetera, et cetera. And they're basically protesting the idea of Riot trying to silence them. And this has been going on for, again, years. However, in light of all these sort of companies and development studios kind of abusing their workers, such as the recent Epic Games overworking them, the whole Anthem case I was just literally talking about, and all these other companies like NetherRealms with Mortal Kombat 11, which I won't talk about here, but basically all the Mortal Kombat games have had massive crunch and disrespectful and toxic work environments. Basically, with all this stuff coming to light, people are actually feeling empowered and actually speaking up, which is great. And I hope that Riot actually starts changing directions, because League of Legends is actually a fantastic game. I mean, people like it or hate it or whatever, and the direction the game is taken isn't into everyone's favor. But as a whole, thousands and thousands of people work on this game. There are tons and tons of contract workers that work on this game, and it is really, really hard to separate, you know, that idea, or very easy to separate the idea of art from studio. And basically the CEO has no say in this sort of game whatsoever. But there is some forced stuff that has been going on with Riot Games that has kind of made, you know, League of Legends a lesser game. They've been doing a lot of stuff like, oh, we need to have a female lesbian now, and so they just released a female lesbian, even though it doesn't fit the lore or the story that the character was actually written for. And we actually had the writer talking about that, and it's just so ridiculous. Now, Riot has obviously said now, in light of all this, they're like, we now have a 90-day diversity plan that's going to fix all the problems. It's not going to fix all the problems. This is going to be a continued issue, and hopefully this protest ends up being the first step towards going to it. What did they call it? Created a 90-day plan. Hold on, they have a link to it here, so I'm going to go ahead and actually read what they called it for the sake of this. They actually have a blog article to it, so I will post that in the description. But, oh man, it's like a long blog post too. But yeah, within 90 days, we will make changes to ensure fairness throughout our recruiting process. So they want to recruit more people from diverse regions and things. So basically, they want to hire more females, and they want to hire more people of color, and et cetera, and begin to roll out results of our job architecture review that will help provide logic and consistency in job titles and expectations by role. Sounds like basically just making sure that everyone knows their role, which, whatever. Launch a new cultural recognition program. That sounds toxic. Create a D&I scorecard that will allow us to continue to track progress over time. So basically a did you compliment the black guy today card. I don't know. I don't know how all this types of stuff will work, but basically they're talking about a lot of stuff. They're going to be like checking off training programs and get feedback and talk to people and launch a new anti-harassment training and stuff, which all of this stuff sounds good. But they've also said they've been doing this stuff for months now, and they just haven't, which is where the lawsuits come from, and that's why it's escalated this far. And it's fucking ridiculous, quite frankly. The amount of toxicity inside the game industry right now coming from the studios themselves is ridiculous. So hopefully this ends up going out in favor of the employees, and we actually see Riot turn around, because again, it's starting to hurt League of Legends. It has been for a while now. And League of Legends might die because of this. Because if they don't fix this, then people are going to start refusing to work there. And if they end up not having a diverse workforce, they're not going to keep up the diversity inside their game, which is something they spoke about years ago. And so they were talking about hiring more diverse environments, because back in the day, they had like a 90% white male workforce worldwide, which wasn't good. So they ended up diversifying to increase their portfolio and make it so that they can introduce new characters. And if they don't successfully fix this, then that's going to end up falling apart, and then they'll just lose one of their big appeals. And they'll obviously have people, because again, this is becoming a big thing in the industry, they're going to have a lot of people just not wanting to work for Riot, which is one of the reasons why I'm never applying to Riot. So there you go. And I'm a white male. Duh. Anyways, on to the next news story. Latest Borderlands 3 controversy. There's a bunch of stuff going along with the Borderlands 3 controversy, and there's a lot of stuff to talk on. So let's talk about the most recent one. Actually, no. Let's start at the beginning. So first off, Borderlands 3 is going to be exclusive to the Epic Games Store, which, oh well, who cares? My comments on that is they can put it on whatever storefront they want. I don't think storefront exclusivity is a big deal. You can go download the launcher and download the game. That's fine. If you don't want to use the launcher and you just absolutely hate Epic Games for whatever reason, then just don't buy it. Done. That's my entire comment on that, is if you don't support the practice, don't buy the game. That's literally all you can do. You can obviously voice your concerns, but that's not going to do anything, because all they want is your paycheck. So if you don't give them a paycheck, then they'll have to change the practices. So if you don't like that idea, just don't buy the game. Done. That's literally all I have to say about anything on the Epic Games Store. I don't hate the Epic Games Store, but I also don't love it. So I'm kind of neutral on the point, but I don't think exclusivities on storefronts is really that big of a deal unless it exclusively supports only certain platforms, like the Windows 10 store. I don't think exclusivity to that is good, because it forces you to use Windows 10, which I don't think is a good thing. Anyways, moving on from that, The next Borderlands 3 controversy was about microtransactions. Basically, Randy Pitchford, or Randy Bitchford as I like to call him, was up on stage and said, there's going to be no microtransactions. And so basically, yeah, there's going to be microtransactions. So it ended up getting elaborated later that they were going to have cosmetic microtransactions, and he called them DLCs as well. So they're going to be DLCs in the game. Now, specifically talking about DLCs are not technically microtransactions, so they are going to have planned DLC and stuff like that, which means I'm going to be waiting to pick up the game until the Game of the Year release and everything. Given the other controversies, I'll cover why. But then 2K is like, no. Borderlands 3 is going to have microtransactions. So they are saying it will be cosmetic only. And so they're like, hey, no, it's just skins and guys. Skins and stuff. It's just skins and stuff. It's none of that pay-to-win, free-to-play bullshit. And that's literally what they said. And yeah, basically, long story short, the game's going to have microtransactions. Done. There you go. Now, it's not going to be pay-to-win, which is good. I don't think that cosmetic microtransactions are always a bad thing if they're done properly. But I do believe cosmetics, people wouldn't buy them if they didn't matter, and therefore it's still microtransactions. And I think the idea of trying to frame it so that cosmetic microtransactions aren't microtransactions is disingenuous and straight out lying. Now, some people brought up, and I know Jim Sterling did a video on this, which I don't always agree with him, but I kind of agree with him on this point. The idea that Randy Pitchford wasn't necessarily lying intentionally. He was rather just kind of pushing the goalpost further, as he described it. So basically, what AAA industries have been doing is they've been pushing things like DLC and making it normalized, which they ended up doing years ago. And now they're trying to do that with, microtransactions. So they're trying to make it so that cosmetic microtransactions aren't microtransactions, and I don't think that was necessarily his fault. And Jim Sterling also ended up mentioning this, to where he doesn't think it was Randy Pitchford's fault. I think it is, because Randy Pitchford is one of the people that have been pushing for this. And so, but he does kind of the idiot that would kind of fall for this. So he might be falling for their own game. He might be falling for the industry's game of trying to push the goalposts forward and make it seem like microtransactions aren't microtransactions to try and normalize them. And they've been doing this with cosmetic DLCs and cosmetic microtransactions, because at first, nobody liked microtransactions at all. Nobody liked cosmetic microtransactions. That was never a good thing. But now people were saying like, oh, it's just cosmetic microtransactions. And now it's okay, because now there's pay-to-win stuff that's in major AAA games now. And so eventually it's going to be like, oh, it's just almost pay-to-win stuff. Like, it's just shortcuts, guys. And eventually we're going to end up pushing it further and further. And so he might not have been intentionally lying, but the deal is he did end up lying. There is going to be microtransactions in Borderlands 3, period. So it's going to be cosmetic only, but I also want to give the caveat that they can always patch in pay-to-win stuff later, like they have with Call of Duty. Every Call of Duty release since the Call of Duty 4 remaster has had that happening. So it can obviously happen in any game whatsoever. There's been a lot of free play games that do that as well. They release and they're like, hey, and there's also other manipulative practices where they have ads that don't show up for the first, few hours you're playing a mobile game, for example. But then after that few hours is up, the timer ticks to 0. Then all of a sudden you get ads. That way the first impression of the game is like, oh, it doesn't have any ads. And then later on you get ads after you're invested in the game. So a lot of this type of stuff is making its way into AAA games, and Borderlands 3 is not exempt from this, which is scary. Now, another controversy was, for one, Randy Pitchford blew up on Twitter about this. I'm not even going to cover it because it's drama. But basically, articles were like updating their things. So like, oh no, Borderlands 3 will have microtransactions. And then Randy Pitchford's like, thanks for calling me out, guys. And just being kind of a general jerk because he's an asshole. And then there was also another controversy that kind of concludes that actual sentence, because apparently the voice actor for Claptrap was actually a normal developer on the game, and he was working on the game, and then he's like, oh, hey, I can do the voice for Claptrap, sure, when he was asked to do it. He wasn't getting paid extra, he wasn't getting paid royalties or anything, or being treated like a voice actor. He was just a normal worker, so he was just kind of having two jobs at once. So while he was getting paid for doing the job, he wasn't getting paid for voice acting, although he was voice acting during his normal job. Now, some people will justify that and be like, well, he was an on-pay employee, so it's okay. I personally think that if you have a separate job, you should get paid for both jobs, but that's just a thing that happens in a lot of industries. It happens literally in every industry I can think of, so not the biggest deal. What is a big deal, however, is he's not going to be returning for Claptrap in Borderlands 3. Now, for one, that's disappointing because he did an excellent job. I think he's awesome, and he seemed like a perfectly normal voice actor. You did an excellent job with Claptrap. It's amazing, and I love Claptrap for that reason. But he won't be returning for Claptrap 3, or for Borderlands 3. He won't be Claptrap 3. It might be Claptrap 3 at this point. I don't know. But essentially, he was making accusations that, well, for one, he wasn't offered to go back on. He said he was willing to, but he was fed up with the abuse he was receiving from Randy Pitchford and the like. He wanted to actually do something cool. He was willing to go back for his friends at Gearbox. Because Gearbox as a developer, I want to make sure this is clear, Gearbox as a developer is actually pretty awesome. They have a lot of good people working there, but their leadership is just absolute ass. And so you have people like Randy Pitchford just being a jerk to everyone. And he said that he was actually receiving a bunch of abuse from him. And basically this ended up going into accusations and actually led to a lawsuit. So there's a lot of stuff kind of going on with that. So yeah, so basically it ended up becoming a personal matter in the fact of it wasn't just about him voice acting, but he was like, hey, I don't want to, voice act for this if I'm not going to be paid, because they were saying it was kind of petty or whatever. And Randy Pitchford was throwing back at him. Again, link in the description for the article for this if you want to actually read up what happened. But that's interesting. Basically, another thing about AAA studios and development studios just being jerks to their employees. I think it's really, really shitty that they didn't pay him separately for doing the voice acting and stuff like that. They should have actually had him as a voice actor worker and then had him as a normal worker as well and kind of split it up and stuff. But whatever, I'm not corporate, so maybe I don't know something that they do, and it kind of sucks that he won't be in the new game, and it's kind of sad to hear that he ended up getting abused, and I feel bad for that. So I feel bad for all the people that work in these studios, but I guess they could leave if they wanted to, but again, finding work is not necessarily an easy thing to do. Next article, this one is kind of gross. Gaming YouTuber ProJared accused of soliciting nude photos from minors. This is actually headed off of a huge big drama spiel that I won't talk about too much here, but I have mentioned in the past that I've watched ProJared's videos before, so I felt like it was worth mentioning it because I have mentioned it in videos and on stream before, and I did actually, in a recent video, I was making a joke about him. Ended up being a little bit more true than I wanted it to be, so that's kind of gross. But yeah, that was an April Fool's video that I never released, and I'll probably never release it at this point because I had some jokes that just weren't tasteful given the recent drama. There's been a lot of drama going around YouTube right now, and there's a lot of, it was basically a joke making fun of large YouTubers, and then some of those jokes ended up being more true than I wanted them to be, and there's just stuff that I don't want to mention their names in good context when this stuff's going on. Anyways, so basically it came out to light that for one, he had this big divorce that ended up leading to this big drama on Twitter and stuff like that. And so he was like, hey, I'm releasing this official statement. And then his ex-wife came out and was like, hey, by the way, this is what actually happened. And this led to a big drama spiel that went on and stuff like that. And he's part of Normal Boots, which ended up meaning that all the people with Normal Boots ended up getting dragged into it as well, which was the same sort of thing that happened when JonTron ended up having this big drama thing. I know not everybody follows drama, but that's what's going on. And I'm not going to talk about the drama, but apparently he was using his kind of notoriety to basically run a Tumblr and a Snapchat service thing, or a blog or whatever. I don't know how those services work fully. I know that Snapchat is a one-to-one direct chatting thing, and then I guess Tumblr has chatting functionality and DM functionality like any other blog thing. But yeah, I guess he was running an adult Tumblr or whatever. And they had people soliciting for nude photos from women and I guess men maybe, I don't know. And so basically that's already gross to begin with. Using your popularity ended up kind of forcing that sort of thing, but it was kind of okay because it was oh, hey, it's just consenting adults, which is somewhat. But apparently he's been forcing people through pressure, and that's the better way to put it, to send him nude photos, and he was obviously sending out his own as well and just sending unsolicited dick pics essentially, which is just gross. And apparently he included minors, and so there's been evidence. I won't link it here, but I will link the article from PC Gamer in the description that actually talks about this, and it's pretty damning stuff. It is absolutely gross, and I want to use this article to say, for one, I was watching one of his recent videos, and I saw something that was kind of questionable inside one of his videos that made me stop watching him after watching 3 of his videos. He's kind of gotten some questionable stuff going on. So he was playing Mega Man Legends or whatever, which I was working on a video for. So I'm like, cool, I'll check out his playthrough. And he made a certain sexual joke about Mega Man and one of the bandit ladies, and it just made me feel awkward, and I had to stop watching his stuff because of that. And apparently other people have picked up on this as well. And I kind of want to remind people, you don't know the person behind the voice or the character when it comes down to YouTube, and this includes everyone, and I'm not going to exclude myself from this. There are things that you don't know about me that, obviously, I'm pretty public, so if you want to find out everything about me, it's literally on there. But the thing, it's online and my vocal things and what I say and stuff like that. If you want to ask some questions, I'm perfectly open with everything. But this has actually become a big deal because this is another example of a YouTuber sort of taking advantage of his popularity or taking advantage of minors through their popularity. It's super gross and super, super terrifying. And I just want to remind people that if you have children or you have younger siblings or something like that that watches YouTube and consumes this type of content, make sure to watch what they're watching and, check out where their socials are going. Don't like get invasive or anything like that, but make sure to let them know that there's scary people online. Make sure to monitor things and make sure to monitor news like this and just make sure that they're not interacting with those people, because otherwise some gross stuff can happen. And we've had some horror stories of YouTubers gone wrong. And this isn't just with YouTubers. There was also a musician just a couple weeks ago or something like that that ended up taking advantage of minors as well. There was the rap artist, R. Kelly, I think his name was, taking advantage of minors as well. So just a general reminder, be careful of these people because you don't never know. Like I've followed ProJared for quite a while. I don't watch a lot of his stuff because I don't watch a lot of YouTube, but most of his stuff seems pretty innocent. But every once in a while, there was something that was questionable and just kind of weird in the way he said things. And I'm not going to make that as like a damning statement or anything, but a child shouldn't be watching that style of content is what I'm saying. And so even people that seem at face value, they seem like they would be child friendly, watch their jokes and what they say, because there are things that ProJared said that should not be viewed by minors. And I think that's gross. So just in general, watch out and just be careful of that. Obviously, if you follow ProJared, unfollow him now. He looks devastated in a stream recently that he was doing as well. Like he knew this was going to happen, and he made a public statement saying that, people are going to come up with rumors and stuff. And I do want to make a preface here as well. All this is technically allegations, but there is evidence of some pretty gross stuff to begin with. So even if it's not about coercing minors or whatever, it's still pretty bad. It's just gross, and you should not be supporting somebody like this at all. So do keep that in mind. Next up, GOG rejected Heaven's Vault, but is now having second thoughts about it. I don't know if it's up on GOG yet. Actually, I should look that up. Hold on, we're going to do some live research. I don't have my screen capture up because I don't know what's going to be in the background, but hold on. GOG Heaven's Vault. I'm going to see if it's up on the store. Yay, it's been announced, so it's going to be on GOG. Yay! Wait, is it? Hold on. I'm actually looking at the store page. I looked it up. Hold on. I'm searching on the field. This is bad. This is bad. I'm not finding it. Okay. So it might be going up on there. But anyways, so Heaven's Vault looks like a really interesting adventure game. I personally won't be picking it up because it's just not my deal. But it's a classic adventure game to where basically it's a story-based adventure of an archaeologist, and it looks gorgeous. And it's been getting a lot of praise recently. And the weird thing is, GOG has their other games, like 88 Days and stuff, or 80 Days or whatever. So it's kind of weird that GOG kind of just declined to take this one. Now, obviously, this is a problem with curated storefronts. Sometimes they don't see when a game is going to be popular, and this is one of those cases, but they've been saying that they're going to be looking at actually taking it into the game. So basically, when they're first announced it, they're like, oh, GOG just didn't accept it, but I guess they might actually be looking back into it, which is kind of interesting. It might be on Discord as well. I don't know. But check out Heaven's Vault. This is just an excuse to bring up Heaven's Vault, because while it's not a game, I'll have a link in the description. While it's not a game I'm personally interested in, a lot of people have actually said it's a really interesting artsy game, and it's an adventure game and stuff, and I thought some people might like it, so this was an excuse to talk about it, quite frankly. So there you go. I might check it out eventually. But there we go. Now you can play the 10-year-old version of Minecraft in your browser. Celebrating the 10th year anniversary of Minecraft, Mojang has released a browser version of the original public release, which was basically just a build simulator. And you can play it with your friends too. It has like drag and drop adding for like click a link or whatever, and then you paste the link to your friends. They click on the link and they're instantly in your game. So it's actually really, really cool. Now, this version of Minecraft has been available for download for quite a while now. Mojang had it on their site for quite a long time, but now it works in your browser, and it's actually pretty dang cool. And it's cool to go back and see how Minecraft was. Now, this isn't survival mode. It's basically just a creative mode thing. And so it's very, very basic, but it's really cool to go back and look at it. And it actually runs in the browser incredibly well as well. Like, I think it runs in my browser better than the Java version runs on my computer. Like, it's ridiculous. But yeah, so you can end up checking that out. It's really cool. I'll have a link in the description both to this article and to the classicminecraft.net. So there you go. Sega has acquired 2 Point Hospital's developer 2 Point Studios. So basically they're like, hey, you guys made a good game and it was really successful, so we're going to go ahead and purchase you out. And this is interesting because basically Sega has, worked in the whole theme park stuff recently. And so yeah, they're working on some really cool projects. I thought I should mention that because it was in the news and it's interesting. Sega has been doing really, really well with the releases recently. And Sega also ended up having recently, I think this was like 2 weeks ago when they announced this, but basically what they want to refocus on multi-platform releases and PC, and they want to release stuff in for Western audiences and global, which I thought was really, really cool, and this could be part of that, and they're acquiring another studio to kind of work on that whole global thing. This is all in light of a few years ago to when they ended up closing offices from worldwide to focus on their home country, Japan, and obviously that didn't work. So, whoever changed in Sega's line of leadership has the right idea here of like, oh, we fucked up. We should fix that. So they're fixing it. Tencent kills off PUBG Mobile in China and replaces it with a brand new version. So basically a modded version of PUBG was replacing the Chinese PUBG Mobile version. So if you've never played games from China, they have their own distribution services and stuff that end up kind of being regulated by the government and all that because they're a censored country, etc., etc. And PUBG Mobile has actually been taken down, and they've upped a new version to where basically it's all patriotic. They removed a lot of the gore. Sorry, my voice kind of went weird for a second. They removed a lot of the gore. They made it so that when you die, you end up waving and just disappearing. It's very shoddy, but to be quite frank, who cares about PUBG? PUBG's kind of ass anyways. Nobody really cares. So yeah, that's just kind of how that's going. I wanted to mention it because it's just kind of funny. They can technically still play the original PUBG on Steam because Steam is not region locked for whatever reason, but that might change in the future with Tencent becoming more and more regulated in China and stuff. So Tencent might have the only storefront at some point. Talk about that in another video at some point, but there you go. That was some interesting news. 2 more points to go on here. Ray tracing is getting a lot of mods put into games, so basically a lot of games are getting unsupported or unofficial ray tracing support. So this isn't talking about any specific mod or any specific game, but I wanted to bring it up because ray tracing is actually really cool technology. Modders are finding ways to actually make it so that you can put ray tracing into pretty much any sort of game. So it's, for example, Reshade has a plugin for it now, and other types of software are kind of working to try and get ray tracing working in basically every single game, including Crysis, including Minecraft, etc., etc., etc. And NVIDIA has actually been making some steps forward, including AMD announcing that even ray tracing stuff will be in their next set of CPUs or GPUs or whatever. But NVIDIA has even released legacy support for older graphics cards to try and run ray tracing as well, even though they don't have the specialized hardware that the 20XX series has. So ray tracing is getting a huge step up. And ray tracing is awesome. Now, for one, it's all cosmetic, but basically ray tracing allows lighting that isn't on screen to be effective. So basically you could have shadows from off screen play onto your scene. You can have, lighting reflect off of the surface from behind you, etc., etc. And it basically makes it so that it's simulating the real life sort of lighting that would go on inside of a room, which is really, really cool. And I like ray tracing as an idea, and it's really, really cool. Unfortunately, it's super intensive, so the chances of you running all this stuff is pretty slim, especially on older hardware, unless you have the actual ray tracing chips inside of your graphics card, which seems to be what the next generations are going to be about. So if you have a 20XX graphics card from NVIDIA, you could probably run this stuff semi-fine, but it's still really, really intensive, especially on your CPU with this modded stuff. But I thought I'd mention it because it seems really, really cool. And then we have Apex Legends is possibly making a mobile version, and they're working on cross-platform. So EA has talked about Apex Legends being their biggest franchise for a very, very long time. And it's a successful new IP technically, even though it's technically part of whatchamacallit's Titanfall. But yeah, so basically it's been really, really big. It's been kind of having a fall off, so this is a little bit weird, but they want to compete with the mobile versions of PUBG and Fortnite. So basically they're working on a mobile version, and they're talking about bringing it to Switch and etc., etc. So that's interesting. I think it's a cool idea. Personally, I don't play Apex all that often. I think the monetization system in it is just ass, quite frankly. I do not like loot boxes in any sense of the word, and so when it comes down to the only kind of monetary situation there being loot boxes and having it sort of tied behind all cosmetics, it doesn't win me over, quite frankly, and I'm not a big fan of it, but there you go. And this was kind of a longer video than I planned it to be, but there we go. Those are all the articles that we had on our gaming Discord called the Broken Chat Box, link in the description for the news and such, and that's kind of my thoughts on all of those. And some personal news, I was sick for like 2-ish weeks, and so I kind of didn't get a lot done there, but I have been streaming as well, so I've started streaming. Stream archives are going to start coming up on the YouTube channel more and more often, and I'm going to be working on a few more heavily edited videos. So, for example, I'm working on more design view stuff. I did talk about with my New Year's sort of resolution blog post thing, I did talk about how I was going to end up revamping the design view, and that's getting closer and closer. The script is done. I need to do the voice acting. I need to do a lot of the editing. I have a new editing style that I'm doing for it that will hopefully be a little bit quicker than what I was planning on doing originally. So we'll see how that ends up working, but I'm working on a lot of stuff like that. And my mods have been getting a lot of updates as well recently. I've been working on Succubus Heart quite a bit, so you can end up checking that out on my website at michaelpstanich.com. And that's pretty much it. I am also working on C++ for my game project, so my rhythm game is getting up and running, so that will be released within the next 3 weeks or whatever, but we'll have more news on next week's video or whatever. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this one. I hope to make this a weekly thing, so if you want to end up following this type of stuff and hearing my thoughts on various types of news articles and getting a little bit more about it and getting the source in the description as well, make sure to subscribe. You can also hit the like button and the bell for whatever things come up. I think I'm supposed to say that. I don't know. I'm terrible at YouTube. And obviously, you can end up leaving your thoughts and comments below. If there's anything that I missed that you thought was relevant or you want to hear more thoughts, make sure to hit me up in the comments section. You can also end up checking out our gaming Discord called The Broken Chat Box, link in the description below. All these articles came from our news and such section. Yes, it is literally called news and such. So you can end up checking that out and posting things when you end up wanting it in there. If you end up posting things there and I end up mentioning it in these videos, I will mention your screen name if that is okay. Hopefully it is. Mention otherwise if you don't want your name known, and then I'll just end up doing it silently. And then, of course, if you like my styles of content, make sure to check out my website at michaelpstanich.com. Sorry, this was a little bit longer form of a video. This was a dramatic week, and I did push back a little bit more than a week to end up talking about a few other things that I wanted to mention. But there we go. That's how these videos are going to go. Hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully this worked well. Make sure to give me feedback on this as well, because I am working on it. I don't know what I'm going to do for the background and the editing and stuff like that. I think I want to throw up the article I'm looking at and have it scroll while I'm talking about it and see how that works. But we'll see what I end up doing and what I have time for. I want to try and get this video up by tomorrow, and it's like 7 p.m. right now. So there we go. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, like I said, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hopefully before next week. Hopefully I get more videos done before the end of this week. Man, I'm so busy.